Let's take a look at one of the fractions from our second practice problem, 3/5. We have to figure out whether this fraction is greater or less than a half, which makes sense if we're going to use half as a benchmark to compare fractions. Why is a fraction like 3/5 a little harder to compare to a half than some other fractions that we work with? Say it out loud. Right. It has an odd denominator. No amount of fifths equals a half. So one of my students last year said it really helped them to draw a picture of a fraction with an odd denominator and see how it compared to a half. So here's a picture. How could that help us? Say it out loud. Yeah, we could look at the whole fraction, right? And then draw a line at the halfway point. It's pretty easy to see half out of the whole thing, right? And then we can just see by looking at it if 3/5 is greater or less than that half. So from this picture, is 3/5 more than a half or less? And how do you know? Right, we know it's more than a half because the three shaded parts of 3/5, they go past the line that we drew at the halfway point. Now, so I'll go ahead and mark this. 3/5 is greater than a half. Another thing that you might do that can help, that also a different student thought was pretty useful, was to think about doubling. So we know that if we double the half, right, a half plus a half, we would get, say it out loud, right, a whole. So when I have a fraction equal to a half and I double it, we get a whole. Fraction less than a half is doubled, less than a whole. So if we double a fraction and it's more than a whole, we also know it's more than a half. So let's try it. What do we find when we double 3/5? Say it out loud. Right, we get 6/5. 6/5 is more than a whole. So we know that 3/5 is more than, say it out loud, right, a half. If you're having a hard time today with fractions that have odd denominators, try drawing a picture, thinking about doubling, or something else that makes sense to you to try and figure out if those fractions are greater than or less than 1/2.